stated, I'm Lakisha Odom from the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, and I've been tasked to kind of give that 30,000-foot view of building on a lot of the questions that would come from a lot of the information that was just presented, and kind of where we could go next, and really taking it to a national level. So what I'll do is spend a little bit of time talking about what our foundation is, what we can do, and then why we're really interested in this space. And I'll try to get through this really quickly so that we can get back to the great conversation. So FFAR, or the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, is a new model for ag research funding. We were created through bipartisan congressional support in the 2014 Farm Bill, so we were really excited to hear conversations about a Farm Bill passing relatively soon. And that's where our primary funding comes. We have a matching model, which means for every dollar that we spend, we have to find a matching partner of non-federal dollars. And we've received a $200 million investment to fund in our strategic funding areas, which I'll go over pretty quickly. And then we're governed by a board of directors, and then we're advised by expert council members, one of which is Chad Ellis. So we're really excited, and we're always happy to have his input on all of our projects in our soil health challenge area. Our mission is to build unique partnerships to support innovative science. So as we have to find those one-to-one matches, we are often looking for partnerships to try to support that science. And we're addressing food and agricultural challenges. So primarily we fund research. We want to support our vision in which we're looking for ever innovative and collaborative science. And we're trying to provide access to affordable, nutritious food grown on thriving farms. And we know that science can make a difference because on average, public agricultural research undertaken today can have a noticeable influence in as little as 2 years. I was so impressed by all the research that I've seen presented at this conference, because in 2 to 3 years, you see on-the-ground results, and that's just what we can see. When you invest in agricultural research, you can really see impacts in a short amount of time. And so this is the only graph that I'll show in my presentation. And that's really just showing that the blue line that's illustrated is the amount of public agricultural R&D, or research and development funding. And as you can see, it's remained pretty steady state or even decreasing. However, the amount of private food and ag research is increasing. And so the green lines are that opportunity space where FFAR exhibits. That's where we stay. So we hope to find ways in which we can bridge and increase the amount of agricultural funding by finding unique partnerships, finding groups that maybe typically don't fund in agriculture, or groups that maybe aren't usually in this space, and finding ways to partner and then use the dollars that we can leverage so we can bring to the table $2 million, and then we can find other partners that might want to partner with us, and then we can make a larger project. So that's how we have typically been able to fund and find new opportunities for ag research, because unfortunately federal funding in the agricultural space is becoming a little bit stagnant. But we know that we need increased private research investments in order to find new models and opportunities. So we're always looking for innovative models and new ways to partner so that we can increase the much needed research. The way that we do that is we try to incentivize public-private partnerships. So on the public sector side, we always have public partners that want to address real-world problems, and they want to access expertise, and they like to transfer research quickly to the economy. And on the private side, they typically want to be corporately, socially responsible, and they want to save money, and there are all these different benefits. They want to cultivate future employees, so there are benefits on both sides of our public and private partners. So we typically can find opportunities to meet in the middle, and we typically stay in what we call the pre-competitive space when we work with our industry partners, and that's just a space where it doesn't necessarily offer a particular advantage to any one particular industry, but it can potentially impact all parties. And these are just a snapshot of some of the partners that we've worked with thus far. So as we said, we had $2 million investment from FFAR, and we have to match that $200 million with non-federal dollars, and we try to bring together diverse groups. So that's basically how we work. And the ways that we work is we can do competitive grants. So we put out a call for proposals, or we can do direct awards where we know the exact project we'd like to work on, or we can do something like a prize where we can say we'll give out a set dollar amount for an innovative solution to a problem. And we typically fund in our challenge areas. And these are our challenge areas: food waste, food loss, healthy soils, and thriving farms, which I manage that particular challenge area. Our protein challenge area, innovation pathways, making my plate your plate, which looks at food nutrition availability, urban food systems or urban agriculture, and then overcoming water scarcity, which I also manage. And then in 2019, we've thought to revise our challenge areas slightly, but soil health and water scarcity won't change. But when we specifically talk about our soil health challenge area, we're looking at things like soil health indicators, data collection and management, enhancing soil health techniques, so all of the things that we talked about today. And to date, since 2016, we've awarded 77 grants. We've leveraged over $1 million, and we have over 100 contributors. I did include some of the projects that we worked on. I'll go through them quickly, though, because I want to get back to the conversation. So we did manage, if you all had the opportunity to hear Dr. Schaefer talk about FFAR nutrient management, we did fund a program with for our research where they're looking at the impact of nutrient management practices on crop yield, soil health, and nutrient use efficiencies and nitrogen losses across the Corn Belt. We funded the largest investment in soil health with a $20 million investment to the Soil Health Institute, the Soil Health Partnership, and the Nature Conservancy, and they're looking at soil health metrics as well as on-farm demonstrations, and then how to engage soil health practices and adoption and non-operator landowners. And then another project that we funded through the Noble Research Foundation, one of our first projects actually was a $6.6 million project to increase the amount of cover crop germplasm. And so that's a way to look at existing cover crop use and then advanced breeding techniques to find new varieties to enhance soil promoting traits. So we have had a number of great projects, but we're always looking for new research gaps. So I think one of the first conversations I had with Christy was kind of what are some additional gaps? And one of the things we talked about was soil health in rangelands and pasture lands. So while we have a lot of indicators and a lot of work that's done in crop soils, it's not really a lot. You won't find a lot in the research about what the needs are in rangelands and pasture lands. So what you try to often see people do is try to just project what the soil health metrics should be. And so what we tend to do when we find a research gap or we're interested in a particular topic is we have a convening event or a workshop. So in 2017, Noble Research Institute was kind enough to host us in a workshop that we titled Assessing and Managing for Soil Health on Rangelands and Pasture Lands. And that workshop was sponsored by the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, Noble Research Institute, Sustainable Rangeland Roundtable, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and the Soil Health Institute. And we spent a lot of time really trying to make sure we had a good small working group number because we wanted to make sure we could have an actual conversation. But we also wanted to make sure we had equal amounts of producers, government folks, academics, nonprofits, folks from trade associations, so we could really have a fair conversation. And what we did over the course of this convening event was try to identify gaps in our soil health research as it relates to production in rangeland and pasture land. So much of the research that was presented here, we're thinking about what we could do on a national level, what we could do to expand it. And so what we found was, in our first panel, we had landowner producers talk about what they needed, their geographic regions in which they operated, how they could more fully understand their management practices, and then what they understand and what their challenges are in soil health. And then we had a state of the science and synthesis panel, much like what Jeff provided, to talk about updates in current and emerging studies in soil and range and adjacent disciplines to figure out kind of what we know and what we don't know. And then at the end of that, we all broke out into different group discussions to really think about what are those issues that we can address, what are those needs, kind of where we are, and who was in the room. We had a number of panels from Greg Brand, Leslie Dorrance out of California, William and Karen Payne, which they're actually here, so it was great to see them again, and Johnny Rogers. They were all livestock producers from various regions. And then on our State of the Science panel, we had scientists from ARS, NRCS, University of Kentucky, and Point Blue Conservation Science. So we tried to vary our geographic distribution as well, so we got a large amount of input, at least in a small group of folks, because we worried that if we made the meeting too large, we wouldn't get a really substantive conversation. So as we started to have these conversations about what the issues were, we found that they really just fell into three buckets: research, farm-based observations, and technical assistance. So a lot of the questions about research are much like what you guys heard a few minutes ago, looking at metrics, economics. As Jeff said, they didn't address economics, but that was a huge part of what came out in our workshop. But a lot of it was technical assistance, right? A lot of folks said they would happily do a lot of this, but who's going to do the work, right? It's fair to say that there's a need for additional testing. There's a need for internship opportunities. There's a need to have just manpower to do these tests. And then there's an opportunity for students to learn, right? So we thought about opportunities to have students come out and maybe do some of the soil testing that you guys talked about, because it is a lot of work, but it's also a great learning opportunity. And then a lot of it is also that farm-based observation. So as Ruder was talking about, how do we learn from those groups that are doing it and they're seeing these successes? So how do we capture that and then transfer that information to other folks that want to learn, but how do we connect them, right? They want this information, they want to know what to do, but maybe they don't know who to talk to, or maybe they want to see it in action before they don't just want to see a pamphlet, they just want to actually see it in action. They want to go to someone's farm, they want to talk to somebody, they want to have clear technical directives, they want to really understand strategies from successful producers. And we wanted to really make sure that we never, much like everyone said on the panel earlier, never say like, this is a right way or a wrong way. Just increase the tools in the toolbox so that folks can choose what makes sense for them. But all of that be undergirded by stronger research and stronger science. So then we did a process of research road mapping where we tried to take all these topics, because there were just pages and pages on all the walls of all these topics. And I'll tell this story because I think Chrissy will just laugh at me, because when we had all these pages in the wall, she just looked at me and she was just like, mm-mm. She was like, we are not going to get there, because I think we wanted to walk away with like 5 or 6 takeaways, and at one point we just had like a room full of pages all over the wall because people were just brainstorming. But we did get to kind of 4 major takeaways, so we did get there. And the major things that we felt like people were kind of burbling up over and over again were the questions of what are the real metrics for soil health in rangeland and pastureland? How can you quickly go out and say what's healthy soil for rangeland and pastureland? What are those metrics? What are those indices? No one knows. What are the costs and benefits for managing rangeland and pastureland? And then what are those relationships between productivity and profit? And then talking about ecosystem services, which I know Jeff has talked about, and we've had a lot of conversations about. Noble's doing some great work in. But that was a huge takeaway, was how do we measure these ecosystem services, and then how do we tie economic profitability and encourage folks to adopt? And then how can we understand and communicate what works and why in order to encourage adoption? And then how can we provide increased technical assistance? And what type of technical assistance would be of the most use, right? What form does it take? And so at the end of this, if we're thinking about what FAR could do in the spaces that we inhabit, we're looking at potentially developing a national program that would emphasize this integrated, transdisciplinary, comprehensive approach that will focus on restoration of rangeland and pastureland systems to enhance soil health. We would want to expand availability for technical assistance for farm and ranch demonstration. We would love to incorporate internship opportunities to provide students with on-ranch experience, but that would also lead to potentially assisting with things like sampling and building out additional studies like the one we talked about today. And overall, we just want to keep the core mission of emphasizing comprehensive goal-based management with adaptive decision-making. So we never want to say that there's a right or wrong way, but just we increase the tools in the toolbox, you use what makes the most sense to you, and then you can adapt your decision-making as it makes most sense. So I think that that's kind of where we landed. But again, this is an open conversation, so we're continuing our discussion. So a lot of this is, if you see this and you feel like we've completely missed the mark on something, let us know today. What we've done thus far is we had the convening, but after this we did a white paper and circulated that for public comment, where we were asking folks the same thing: did we miss the mark completely? And then we had comments, collected those comments, made changes to that white paper. We presented this concept to a number of different groups all asking the same thing from folks, like, is this going to be of use to you? Because at the end of the day, that's what we want, is to produce a national program that will be of use. And so we're asking as many folks as possible, like, is this kind of in the area of the things that you need or want, or you feel that that's addressing kind of the research needs that you feel? And so the next step is we're continually refining and developing this concept and seeking as much stakeholder input as possible. And then once we get the concept a bit refined, we'll identify potential matching partners for that non-federal one-to-one match. And then we need to identify and prioritize which research gaps we can tackle, because as we bring additional partners in, they may have a priority that they would like to bring to the table that may not be in that top four list. They may have something else, or they may want to shift something that maybe we put at 4 to number 2. That's just a process when we engage additional partners, and we're always open to that. So at this point, that's where we are with the concept. Is we're still seeking the last little bit of stakeholder input, and if everyone kind of says this is kind of a good space to be in, then we'll move forward. We're looking for potential matching partners, and then prioritizing the research gaps, and then ideally rolling out a program that could fund additional research in this space. So I think the last thing is just some pictures from the conference itself, the convening event itself, and then that's me. So I'm going to stop now so we can open it back up for conversation.